Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Shadow Tech Goddess, Part 1, Chapter 3 of Visiting Dignitary. So when last we read, Paymaster Stenstrom, captain of the fleet privateer vessel Seeker, had a visiting person come aboard his ship, offer him a lot of money to do a seemingly negligible task, and you always have to be wary of things like that, both in fiction and in real life. Gives him a little device called an anatometer and wants him to take it someplace, and she's going to pay him a ton of cash because he has a yearly quota that he's indebted to the fleet. If he doesn't pay it, I actually have no idea what happens if he doesn't make his quota. But he's gonna make it this year because she gave him a ton of money. Gives him a device called the anatometer. He asks, is it dangerous? And she says, yes, it's incredibly dangerous. It's gonna alter you. It's gonna affect those whom you love. Some irreparably so. Some might not survive. And for at least a while, it's gonna cause you nothing but misery and grief. So he slides it back across the table towards her, says, well, that sounds horrifying. I frankly don't want anything to do with it. But then Queen Wendilnight, if I hadn't said, fiddles with time using a little device around her neck, resets everything until she gets a result that's more to her liking, that being him accepting the anatometer and taking it to the cistern of the Shadow Tech Goddess. And he's like, I've never heard of such a place. Where is it? And she says, well, you're gonna meet a daffy giantess named Melazarr. When you do, then you'll find out where the cistern of the Shadow Tech Goddess is. And he's like, okay. So that's where we left off, and as we know from the previous chapter, that Melazarr of Caroline is, even as we speak, winging her way towards the Seeker. Let's proceed, shall we? I'm in a bit of a time crunch today. Life is grand, is it not? But let's proceed. Part 1, Chapter 3 of Visiting Dignitary. They led Melazarr down the bluff near the coast where a small ripcar waited. Aram seated Alesta and wrapped her green robe around her like a blanket as he strapped her in. Then he strapped Melazarr into her seat. She made large eyes at him the whole time. Her flashing face lit up the interior of the craft. Alesta, normally such a demure woman, turned red with anger. She crossed her arms and stewed. Will you please cease that infernal blinking? It's giving me a headache. Well, we can't have that, can we? Melazarr replied. She opened her mouth and drew out a surprisingly large round disc, form-fitted to her upper palate. She manipulated it in an odd fashion, and then hid it within the metal structure of her gown. Happy? Alesta didn't respond. Aram then piled into his seat and fired the ripcar up. Soon, they were blasting high over the quiet Hala landscape. Stenstrom couldn't help but smile as he looked at the odd woman sitting at the far end of the table. They were sitting in the Seeker's large main conference room, the lovely green and blue ball of Cana rolling past the window every so often as the ship orbited the equator. Stenstrom, decked out in his usual dark green HRN coat and white shirt, sat at the head of the table. He was sans his once ubiquitous mask. He hadn't worn it in some time. Seated next to him in her well-cared-for fleet uniform was Lieutenant Gwendolyn, Lady Apprentice, and the ship's chief engineer. Farther down the table, Morgan Jetterix, Lady of Thompson, and the ship's hospitaller sat reviewing, scrolling information on her pad. She wore her usual black and silver uniform, topped off by her winged silver helmet, which she kept pushing away from her nose, her blonde hair tightly braided and interwoven with beads, as always. Sitting on the other side of the table was Private Tara de la Anderson of the 110th Marines, the ship's first officer. Sitting next to Tara was Lady Alesta of Dare, 10th Order, one of the contingent of Pilgrims of Marion, who had taken permanent residency aboard the ship. Lady Alesta, as Pilgrims of Marion usually went, was a kind, winsome presence, always smiling and bursting with optimism. Alesta wasn't smiling now. In fact, she looked rather put off. She cast a deadly gaze at the woman seated at the end of the table and loudly eating a plate of Miranda sauce, freshly made by the chef, Lord Rump. The woman ate with relish. She didn't use the knife and fork provided, but moved the food around with her stubby knife, spearing the pieces and then popping them in. Stenstrom smiled. My good friend Lord Aram told me you were hungry. I can clearly see that. She looked up from her plate. Oh, I'd love League food. She looked around. Where's Joe? She asked as she ate. If you're referring to Lord Aram, he's standing at the helm, Stenstrom said. So he really does fly the ship. That's great. I thought he was just trying to impress me. Alesta narrowed her eyes and hunched up a little in her seat. As was stated before, Lord Aram is my betrothed, and impressing you is irrelevant. Perhaps you weren't listening. I would appreciate it if you could pay both he and myself the proper respect. The woman shrugged. Want to fight about it? Alesta didn't answer, but given her expression and shade of hue, clearly her internal response was a resounding yes. In the brightly lit interior of the ship, the woman's appearance could be fully appreciated at last. She was a long, lank woman wearing a confoundedly odd gown, partially made of black cloth, partially of bare metal and wire with a black undergarment hugging her chest, keeping her covered up. The wire harness around her torso appeared to be somewhat sharp, and she held a posture which appeared suited to prevent herself from being cut by it. The fabric portion of her gown was a tarnished green color stained in black. She was wearing form-fitting black gloves that went up to her elbows. On her legs she wore a sultry pair of netted stockings, ended with a pair of stiletto heel shoes, which looked very much like what the fashion in the south of Hoban was currently. The shoes added several inches to her already impressive height. As before on the surface, her face was heavily made up. The thick base coating of white, red, and blue designs painted in at her cheekbones and deeply rouged cheeks. Her long hair was painted a metallic olive green and was held in place over her head in a towering, bunched-up mess. Her hair appeared stiffly teased or starched, so much so it almost looked like a hat or enameled shell instead of hair. There was a silver rivet stamped into the side of her nose. The woman also appeared rail-thin and gangly, though her lean body was canvassed in cut-defined muscle. She finished the last morsels of food. That was good! I want some more. Gwendolyn, sitting next to Stenstrom, raised an eyebrow. You would like some more, please, she said. We follow rules of basic courtesy aboard this ship. The woman pointed at her with her knife. Does she have to be here? I don't think I like her much. She pointed at Alesta. Her neither. Stenstrom shook his head. Come here, sir, came a reply from above. Come, please ask Lord Rump for another helping of Miranda sauce, along with refreshments all around. I'm thinking coffee for everyone here. Coffee? She shouted. We're gonna have coffee? That we are, Stenstrom said. Oh, this keeps getting better and better. I haven't had coffee in forever. Grown here on Cana, right? Not that crap-ass stuff from Midas that the Zaphans call coffee. No, well, actually the best coffee comes from Onaris, he said. It's good Onaris Calvertland coffee we serve. Well, where is it? Let's get on with it. After a few minutes, another plate of Miranda sauce came, along with several cups of coffee. Gwendolyn sat properly as Stenstrom prepared her cup, then smiled and accepted it. Regardless of the heat, the woman slurped her cup down. Ah, that was good. Gwendolyn took a sip from her cup, then folded her hands together. So, do you by chance have a name? It is customary for one to properly introduce oneself. Is it? Not where I come from. She pointed at Alesta with her knife. You know my name. Tell him what it is. Alesta fumed. Stenstrom couldn't help but chuckle. It was so odd seeing the normally calm and reserved Alesta on the verge of a fit of temper. She ground her teeth. This creature is Melazarr, and she also claims to be a maiden of Caroline. Melazarr. Stenstrom's smile faded. Melazarr? Your name is Melazarr? She turned her gaze to him. Yeah, she said slowly. That's my name. He stared at her. I was told to expect you. Yeah? Well, here I am. Stenstrom rubbed his chin. Do you have any information for me? Melazarr stopped eating and rolled her eyes up. Information? Well, you're sort of handsome, I guess. How's that for information? And you are a Merton, Stenstrom asked. She looks perplexed. Yeah, what? No, what am I? What's a Merton? Gwendolyn jumped in. And you claim to be a Lady of Caroline, is that correct? Melazarr speared more food. I don't claim to be anything. I am a Caroline, but I'm no lady. Lady is a league term we don't use. I'm no lady. That is obvious. Alesta sat there, her coffee steaming and untouched. I cannot believe that this person is a Lady of Caroline. Everyone here knows that I always strive to see the good in people. However, in this case, I see very little. I think of all those poor gentlemen going out to those dangerous ruins every night, hoping to encounter love, and instead ending up saddled with a bizarre creature like this. Oh, come on, A. Let's hear how you really feel, Melazarr said. And I believe any who choose to go carofab are doing those gentlemen a grand favor by saving them from the disappointment and horror of the real thing, Alesta threw in. I have no idea what a carofab is, therefore I forgive you, Melazarr said. Gwendolyn spoke up. A carofab is a woman who sneaks out to the Caroline ruins, pretending to be a Lady of Caroline. There's an extensive spy network here on Cana that makes it its business to know exactly who is going out to the ruins and when. When someone promising is expected, hopeful local ladies are made aware of it and attempt to pass themselves off as Ladies of Caroline. That is a carofab. Melazarr nodded. I see. Well, goody for them, I guess. That makes you a carofab then, doesn't it? Isn't that what you were doing down there tonight? Trying to sink your hooks into Joe's tiny shoulders? Alesta was outraged. No, how dare you? Aram is my lord and my beloved future husband. You knew full well we were playing a simple game. Stenstrom spoke up. Being a carofab isn't a bad thing. My sister Constance went carofab many years ago and ended up with a fine husband to whom she is devoted. Lord Aram's brother also paired off with a carofab, though she still won't admit it. Gwendolyn said, I don't think this woman is a Caroline. I think she's a cast-off from so low-level or downtrodden Zaffin House was hoping to change her situation in the ruins. I think you, Lady Melazarr, are a carofab too, and would like for you to admit it, please. Melazarr winked at Gwendolyn and blew her a kiss. Morgan Jeterix jumped in. Gwen, per standard procedures, I examined the DNA sample Lady Melazarr offered up upon boarding. Her genetic markers do match the trace samples contained in the House of Caroline's ancient patent. Additionally, her genetics show a red flag for paternal giantism, which is passed down from male to daughter, and giantism is another feature of Caroline females. She also has a pierced nose and a somewhat patchy skin pigmentation we know Carolines have, thus her reliance on heavy makeup and gloves to cover it up. Easy now, Melazarr said. So, Morgan continued, I'm forced to conclude that the Lady of Melazarr is, in fact, a maiden of Caroline. Again, a tragedy for any reputable gentleman going out there, Alesta said. So let's get down to it, Gwendolyn said. What were you doing out there amid the ruins tonight? First, who is he? Tara, for the first time, spoke. I don't think we properly introduced ourselves. He is Stenstrom, Lord of Belmont, and the captain of this ship. Melazarr's gaze never left him. He's not wearing a uniform. I thought she was the captain. She pointed at Gwendolyn with her knife. What's his rank? He's a paymaster, by title, a civilian, Tara said. A civilian is in charge of a fleet battleship, Melazarr said. So she's second in command then, right? Nope, Tara said. I am. Private Tara de la Anderson, 110th Marines and first officer of this ship. Private? Yep. Although my paperwork is coming down from command, I'm soon to be promoted to P Lieutenant. Congrats. Gwendolyn appeared to tire of the banter. I am the chief engineer. I have Paymaster's ears and... Yeah, Melazarr said. What else of his do you have? Gwendolyn flushed and didn't answer. As usual, when Gwen clammed up, Morgan Jeterix spoke up for her, saying what was on Gwendolyn's mind. It was an annoying talent, and once she got started, she rolled with it. We asked you a question earlier, so how about it? Morgan said. What were you doing down there in the ruins? As the legend goes, Caroline maidens only show up down there when in mortal peril. So what happened? Melazarr resumed eating. I was on a date. A date? You were on an outing? Whatever you want to call it. I was having dinner with Rodrigo of Bergen. Stenstrom thought a moment. If I'm current on my knowledge of Zaffin's society, Rodrigo of Bergen is a member of a highly ranking house. I guess so. Sure. The House of Bergen are cannibals if the rumors hold true, Morgan said. Did he try to eat you? Is that what happened? No. He tried to ply me with drink and then sacrifice me. Maybe he might have eaten me after that. I don't know. You know, Sten, you've got awesome eyes, she said, winking at him. Both Gwendolyn and Lady Alesta fumed, as though they wished she had been eaten or sacrificed. His name to you is Paymaster Stenstrom, if you would be so kind, Morgan said, again channeling Gwendolyn's thoughts. Stenstrom tired of all this silly chatter. Ma'am, you may call me Belle. All my friends call me that. She leaned over her plate and gazed at him. I see. Am I your friend, Belle? Absolutely. So then, why don't you... Rodrigo of Bergen. Do you know him well? He said. He was not going to let her control the conversation the way she had with Alesta and Gwendolyn. She leaned back. Not at all, actually. So then, how did you end up on an outing with him? He inquired at our ancestral compound in Wilhelmina. He offered an impressive sum to be seen in public with the Caroline, and he inquired about me personally. I have certain tropist talents that I'm well known for. So my father appointed me. It's a big deal, so here I am, all done up. Gown, keratina, updo, flash-ons, the works. You want to see it? Don't you dare put that thing back in your mouth, Alesta cried. My lady, please, Stenstrom said. So you didn't feel worried about being in such close quarters with a reputed cannibal? She raised her eyebrows. Should I have felt worried? Alesta spoke up. Of course not. What should one such as yourself have to fear from a mere cannibal? I should think it was he who was in greater bit of peril in your reckless presence. I'm getting the distinct impression you don't like me much, eh? I'm sure Joe likes me. I'm sure he likes me just fine. It's not in my nature to dislike anyone. I simply do not appreciate the manner which you have treated both myself and the man whom I love. Oh, you mean Joe, the little guy I'm gonna... So, madam, may we please stick to the topic at hand? Stenstrom said. So tell us about your encounter with Rodrigo of Bergen. Melazarr wanted more coffee, and Stenstrom called for a fresh pot to be brought in. When it came, she drank down a piping hot cup or two and continued. He came to Wilhelmina in a grand procession, took me away to Bergen. Bergen's really not a bad place, and the Bergens don't eat man flesh as often as you think. Mostly, they sell man flesh to other beings. I don't know who buys it, but there it is. He took me to a fine restaurant in Burlinson at the edge of a vast forest. The date was kind of boring. I didn't care much for Rodrigo. There was this nasty woman all wrapped up in black, sitting in the wings, watching us. I thought she might be his mom or something. Anyway, I could tell early on he was trying to get me drunk. He ordered bottle after bottle of sour grape wine and seemed a little put off when I didn't soften up as quickly as he wanted. The bad thing for him, I can drink. I could probably drink the lot of you under the table before I'm half warmed up. Ha! Tara replied. Melazarr continued. Anyway, when I got tired of the wine and the company, I pretended to pass out. I was sort of curious what would happen. That's when all the people in robes showed up. Robes? That's right. They came out of everywhere. They picked me up and dragged me outside, cutting their fingers on my keratina here. She flicked her wire harness with her finger, and complaining the whole time how heavy I was, which I rather took offense to. Then they stuffed me into a floater and took me out into the woods. And no one in the restaurant cared to assist you while all this was happening? Nope, she replied. Zaffins, remember? They just kept on eating. Stenstrom thought a moment. So you pretended to pass out and then they dragged you out to the woods. Is that when you disappeared? Is that when your Very Mary spirited you away to safety? Not hardly. The Very Mary doesn't crash me out until the very last second. So they took me out to the woods, still complaining about how heavy I was and how bad my keratina's messing them up. Then they lugged me out to a clearing with a fire. That's when Rodrigo showed up, dressed in robes, just like the others. He mentioned something about burning me and reading my guts. I don't know. They wanted to burn you alive? Stenstrom asked. That's what he said he was going to do, and he was going to summon some sort of goddess. Then he pulled a knife and made to slice off my Very Mary to keep me getting away. A goddess? Stenstrom asked. You mean the Shadow Tech goddess? Melazarr thought back. Yeah, That's the one. That's when I clobbered him with my feet and he fell back into the fire. He got up burning and ran into the woods like a flaming marshmallow. I got up and the others all drew knives and made to stick me, though they really weren't all that tough. That's when the others arrived with a monster. Stenstrom frowned. A monster? Yep. The fire turned black, lots of white smoke like fog, and something big was moving around inside the fog. I saw a bright pair of eyes like headlights on a sea loader, and it made this funny clicking sound. Before I knew it, a big pair of claws came out of the fog, like crab claws or something, and they came down to get me, and that's when the Very Merry zapped me out of there. That's when I showed up in the ruins for the 57th time. And what did I find waiting for me here? Chocolates, and a little guy who's already hooked up to this hung-up, hit-out bitch. Alesta bounced up. Those chocolates were for me, not for you, and I happen to like them very much. And if you wish to toss names about, I'm certain I can respond in kind. You electroplated Zaffin harlot. You miserable slut. Bring it on, eh? Stenstrom laughed. Lady Alesta, please. Need I remind you, you are in the star's light. It would certainly not approve of you fighting and catcalling with a visiting guest. She sat down and caught her breath. My lord, thank you for reminding me of my responsibilities. Madam Caroline, please accept my apologies for my rude behavior. Melazarr smiled. It's okay. Besides, it's not Joe I'm planning on taking anymore, so you needn't worry. It's him I'm gonna have. She pointed at Stenstrom. Stenstrom was a tad shocked. That's quite a story, he said, and I'm certain all present are relieved you escaped your ordeal unharmed. So, madam, is that all? Do you have anything further to tell me? Melazarr pursed her lips and blinked. No. I can make something up for you, if that would make you feel better. Thank you. No. I suppose the next move is up to you. Where would you like to go? Your status as a visiting dignitary obliges us to be at your disposal for a short time. We can arrange to take you anywhere in the League you might wish to visit, or we can return you home. Belle, Gwendolyn said, it is not the mission of a main fleet warbird to ferry wayward Zaffin women home. We shall summon a transport to take her to Xandar, where she may then make her way there as best she can, assuming she wants to return to Caroline. Is that what you want, ma'am? Stenstrom asked. Melazarr looked at him hard, her eyes smoldering. Why don't you just tell me what I want? Belle. Gwendolyn spoke up. So it's settled then. Tomorrow you're on a transport safely on your way home. You'll have top-rated passage, I assure you. Well, gee, Gwen, what's the matter? Can't take a little competition? I just got here. I'm not ready to leave yet. Want to show me around, Belle? I just love League ships. Stenstrom stood. Certainly. Come on, Gwen. Let's show our guest around. No, Melazarr said. Not her, just me and you. Fat chance of that happening, Morgan said. So, Belle, you promised me a tour. Indeed I did. First, however, I've duties to attend. I'll order quarters made available to you at once, and when you're refreshed, we shall have the tour. I'd rather stay with you, she said, making eyes at him. Gwendolyn spoke for herself this time. Ma'am, it is not appropriate for a visiting guest to speak to the commander of a fleet vessel in such a manner. Rest assured, you shall be accommodated in the best we have to offer. Melazarr ignored her. So what do you say, Belle? Do I have a chance or not? You do not, Gwendolyn replied. Yeah? What do you have to say about that, Belle? Gwendolyn rose and leaned in, her hands on the table. He has nothing to say to you. You've done nothing but tread on our goodwill and behave in a scandalous manner since you set foot aboard. I am growing tired of your constant stream of quips, both towards our helmsman and our commander. And what's it to you, ice twat? Gwendolyn reached for her fedula. My relationship with Paymaster Stenstrom is none of your concern, she spat. However, if you insist on antagonizing me, you can bet you'll be losing a mouthful of teeth before I'm finished with you. Stenstrom grabbed the hand holding the fedula. Well, let's go, babe, you and me, right now. Tara joined Stenstrom in restraining Gwen, while Melazarr laughed. And with that, we conclude Part 1, Chapter 3 of Visiting Dignitary. So, Melazarr gets aboard the ship. Her manners are rustic, to say the least, and most of Melazar's brash act and constant quips is mostly just an act. She's actually a very insecure girl, seeking affirmation. She comes from the House of Caroline and the court of Wilhelmina, and there's apparently a lot of Carolines in that court. They usually breed via genetic fusion, and so usually they have like a lot of fathers and a lot of mothers. They take the best that they can from the various donors and come up with an embryo of a child. That's how the Carolines do it. They just don't do it the old-fashioned way. And being in this house of giant-sized people, she's pretty insecure and kind of searching for herself. And this act that she puts on is being very brusque and sexual in nature is mostly just that, an act. You don't really see that too much in this particular story, but in her own book, Melazarr, which I'm still working on, you see it much more. That she's really much quieter and shy, I suppose, than you would think. Puts on all this makeup. She does her hair up. So her hair is actually kind of a fawnish color, and she is kind of splotchy the way Morgan pointed out. But when she takes off her makeup and her hair is normal, you really see the actual her, and it's much more quiet and subdued than this. And she's purposely antagonizing Alesta and Gwen just to see what will happen, to see how they'll respond. But being a giant, she's a pretty imposing physical presence, so who knows what would happen. Although Gwen's pretty tough herself. Alesta, she has dare fighting skills, but I'm not sure how well she'd do against a giant. But that's neither here nor there. So Stenstrom, given his meeting in the previous chapter with Queen Wendilnight, was expecting Melazarr, and as was foretold, the Shadow Tech goddess came up as a matter of topic. And Queen Wendilnight said when you hear of the Shadow Tech goddess, that's when you'll find out where to take the antimatter. And we'll find that out actually next chapter. Things are in motion now, and things will start happening quickly. Next week, part 1, chapter 4, is entitled The Shadow Tech Goddess. So here's where we learn more about the Shadow Tech Goddess, and we'll actually find out where this cistern of the Shadow Tech Goddess is located. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.